Welcome to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a more productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. In the podcast, I explore cycling's global trends, community needs, innovative business strategies, and the journeys of remarkable individuals in the world of cycling. Today, we have a very special guest who embodies passion and advocacy in the cycling world. Selene Yeager is a renowned journalist, athlete, advocate, and mentor whose work has significantly shaped the world of cycling and particularly the gravel cycling community. Known as the Fit Chick from Bicycling magazine, Selene has authored numerous books and articles inspiring countless cyclists to explore gravel cycling and cycling in general. Her advocacy, particularly for women over 40 going through menopause, has broken barriers and created inclusive opportunities in the sport. Selene's achievements extend beyond writing. She's an accomplished gravel athlete with podium finishes at events like Unbound Gravel, Mid-South, and Iron Cross. She's also the host of the podcast Hit Play Not Pause, which focuses on empowering women to live strong and healthy lives as they go through menopause, which further amplifies her impact in the sport. So join me in this learning journey as I explore Selene's journey, her advocacy for women in cycling, and her insights into the future of the sport. But before we get into the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked what you listen, please remember to give us a review, rate the podcast, and just follow the podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps me to grow the podcast, continue to bring you amazing guests, for us to go on a learning journey, and have an amazing experience. Now, back to the podcast. Welcome, Selene, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Brilliant. I wanted to start by telling you that I've been on a journeys, kind of a learning journey, learning more about menopause. Information is not so widely available that everyone knows about it or the intricacies of it. And it's a topic that, well, I speak for myself, I wasn't hugely knowledgeable about. I knew of it, but I didn't know much about it. To add to that fact is women have been portrayed negatively when they're going through menopause as well. So I wanted to start our conversation by asking you, why do men need to learn about menopause?
That's a good question. And it's one that I appreciate you asking. And it is one that comes up with some frequency. To be very clear, everybody needs to learn about menopause because, as you mentioned, until very, very recently, I started my podcast in 2020. And at that time, it still wasn't something that people were saying out loud very much, right? Like it was shrouded in this very strange stigma and shame for no good reason.
Exactly.
And I often think how awful that was and how lucky we are that that is changing. And I like to consider myself part of that change, humbly, that the more that we talk about it and normalize it, the better, because women going through it are experiencing a seismic life shift. For men, I try to say to them, imagine that all of your testosterone disappeared over a period of 2 or 3 years. I mean, you wouldn't even recognize yourself, right? Like it would be, but that's kind of what is happening. Our sex hormones, like women's sex hormones, go on this roller coaster in the years leading up to it, which cause dramatic mood changes and cognitive changes and physical changes. Yeah. And then they just go, whoop, and they just sort of flatline. And that's got they used to call it the change. Well, that's because things really change. And if you don't understand it yourself, and as a woman, your partner doesn't understand it, your training partners, I ride with a lot of men, then everybody just thinks like, wow, what is wrong with her? And you think, oh, what is wrong with me? The more that we all understand it, the more it just makes it not this very shameful, scary thing, but also there's so much we can do about it. And if it's not part of the conversation and it's not normalized, then women don't get care and they just suffer and sort of recede to the shadows. So that's why I think everybody should know about it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You want the women have to go through that change. You want them able to have the right tools to thrive through it.
Yeah, totally.
And that's kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but that's part of one of your purposes with
That's
the work
my
that you've
main
been doing.
purpose. Yeah, my show.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there is a lot of knowledge that is still being gathered, mainly because the scientific community until very recently was not putting the right efforts into investigating, into research, what the consequences it has on the woman body, as you mentioned, the brain as well. So I'm curious. I mean, this conversation will be me coming from a place of curiosity. So what were some of the biggest challenges you have encountered when advocating for women over 40 or women going through menopause in the cycling community? Because I asked this question because you have in previous conversations through your own podcast as well, you have been on this journey that has kind of your career has evolved, and your interests and experience have been shaped as well by menopause. So I wanted to learn a bit more about what was the challenges that you have encountered through talking about it and being open about your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm going to answer this a few ways. The first way is I have not really encountered challenges talking about it because people have been enormously receptive to it, quite frankly. I have every race I go to, every event I go to, I have women and men coming up to me and literally thanking me for the work I'm doing because they did not know and they're very grateful for it. So I actually haven't encountered that much resistance in that way. One of the things that I think I still see some skepticism about sometimes and it's always men, it's not women, in their eyes, is how profound and how quickly it can come on. I've given presentations at the USA Triathlon Summits, the Endurance Exchange, and I understand it because I myself, I've been a coach and a trainer for most of my life, and when I was younger, women in this age demographic would come up to me and say, my body changed overnight, and I did not believe them. I didn't. I was like, that's impossible. But then I felt that way myself when I hit it. And then I learned the science, and sure, it's not like literally overnight, but it's fast. It's a period of a couple of years where usually age related changes are this gradual thing, this long off ramp. And with this, as I explained earlier, because of the nature of the hormone drop off, a lot of stuff does happen very quickly. You just wake up and you're like, who is this? So, I think that for people who still have not experienced that, or particularly like men who may never experience that, there's still a little bit like, really? But I'm like, yes. So that's probably the biggest thing I could think of.
Yeah. That's why also adding to the question I just asked at the beginning of the conversation, why do men need to learn more about menopause? Because I have a partner and she will eventually have to go through menopause. I have a mom that she's going through menopause, and we all have relatives that will go through menopause or have gone through menopause. So it's important to have at least kind of the curiosity to know a bit more, understand what effects and impact will have on, as a man, on your partner or on your relative, because there is ways you can help them, and
100%.
if nothing else, you can be more understanding of what's going on in their lives. I think that's very important. Also to not downplay it, as you just now saying as well.
That won't go over well.
I'm pretty sure. Pretty certain it won't. No. So you mentioned that you felt a very positive response to the advocacy work that you have been doing. And I'm interested into learning about what have been the key factors that have helped you succeed and reaching more people, in bringing more women into cycling and feeling welcomed by the cycling community.
Yeah, I mean, but there's a few that I can think of. One being, I've been in the space a very long time. I started
Yeah.
working at Bicycling. I wrote my first feature for them in 1990, and I was a columnist for them for 27 years. So I have been in this space a very long time. I've written books, I've co-authored books. So,
Yes.
I had a really long history, and just had made a lot of connections, and people just knew who I was in the cycling world, right? In the cycling industry. So when I hit this space where I wanted to really, really help women specifically in this demographic, I had already built this foundation of network of people, and people that I could talk to, people who would talk to me, women who are racers of the same age, nutritionists, researchers, you name it. I mean, I had already developed this, and I was very fortunate. Yeah. So I was very fortunate to have then intersected with Feisty Media, who is the parent company that eventually did my podcast. They, just literally just sort of handed me a microphone and said, if we would happily host you if you want to do more work in this area. And I did. And so that's, that really helped reach even a broader, very female specific audience that I was looking for. So pretty much those two things are the biggest things. It's really just a lifelong of making contacts and creating that foundation.
Yeah. I mean, and also the lived experience.
Well,
I guess
that helps. I've been a racer.
That is
all that things. Yeah.
That is a key aspect. You mentioned, and I think this is something that you approach quite specifically on your podcast. I don't think I know that a lot of advice is given to women one of them is to be more active.
Yes.
And you have touched upon this many times in the past. With how can you be a more active? What more information is there that to make sure that athletes like yourself that really already active at high level, or just at any level that want to take.
Yeah.
What were the obstacles that you found in that space? Because that's kind of perhaps the space where you are most active in finding information, finding people that are able to shed some light on how women going through menopause can be more active and thrive as well through that period.
Right. I mean, one of the reasons that I started the show, actually the main reason I started the show, is that most of the advice, like be more active, was not geared towards active women. It was geared towards the vast majority of the population, not at large, not just women, but the vast majority of people don't exercise on purpose. Right. So when the advice is be more active, you're just like, I have 30 years of Training Peaks files. I can show you I'm very active. So, my mission was to find, just as you said, I had to find experts, research, which is not easy to come by, on active women, for active women that can benefit active women to help them maintain their activity and to thrive. Even women in their 40s and 50s are very, very, able to still hit some, PRs even. That's happening. We see women in their 50s winning Race Across America. So it's just it was just finding the right people. And unfortunately, I had a lot of the right people. I had written a book with Dr. Stacy Sims. I've written 2 with her. And that's her life's work, is women-specific physiology and sort of working with that. And, really getting across to women, I think the biggest message there was getting across to women, you need to strength train. That was something that, women were always like, oh, just lift those little 5-pound pink weights, you'll be fine. They weren't really invited into the weight room. It just wasn't part of our training, especially as an endurance athlete. Even men didn't resistance train much, way back. So
Yeah.
It's really, really, really important for women, especially once they hit that 40 plus and once they hit the menopause transition, to lift and to really lift, not just like a bag of cat food kind of weight, but like actually heavy weight. So that's been sort of the biggest thing I found in the research, in the literature, in the women that I've worked with, to get women like, and it's getting across, like it's 100%, that message is landing. And once they do, they feel so good that they keep doing it and they spread the word themselves.
Totally, yeah. I wanted to you touched upon the. I wanted to kind of slightly shift gears because you mentioned earlier on about your career, like spanning over 30 years as an athlete. And I wanted to touch a bit on that, not to like dissect your career, but to look at the milestones, because being a professional mountain biking racer now in the gravel space, ultra endurance events, you have been doing a lot, and I just named 3. There's more. Were there any pivotal moments that kind of you see looking back that define your career?
Oh yeah, I mean, and career, I make my living with my words, so the athletics were great, and I have some nice results, but they didn't ever pay the bills, especially at that point. But I honestly, the biggest pivotal moment in my career, sort of across the board, is I did Ironman in 2008, and I won my age group, and I went to Kona 6 weeks later, and that was just,
that's quite impressive.
Yeah, it was a very big shift for things. That's when I got picked up by sort of the semi-professional mountain bike racing team, and I started racing on that professional level, like with Rebecca Rush and doing Cape Epic and doing the big events. That 100% was a pivotal moment in my life on many levels. I mean, I learned that I was capable of so much more than I even knew, and it just took me around the world, and I got a wealth of experience and met so many people that changed my life. It was really a launching pad.
You are a journalist by trade, and that's, as you said, that's your living through your words. That's a very nice way of putting it. So there's a very good intersection, because you have published like tens of books. It's like I think it's over 30.
Yeah.
Plus countless articles, and I'm interested and curious on the intersection as an athlete and a writer. How do they work together, and like, do they inform your writing? Do they work vice versa? Does your writing inform the events you go and do?
I've always felt very, 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 very fortunate that I make a living doing what I love. And because I love all of that, I love the athletics and I love writing. And the nice part about that is that, because a lot of the content that I create is training oriented, is performance oriented, is wellness, health oriented. So I spend a lot of time in research to optimize all that stuff, right? And then I go out and try it, and it seems like it's like I'm an N of one, but I also get to interact with people and see what they're doing and talk to sports scientists and researchers and nutritionists and see what they're recommending. So that's been sort of the constant interplay in my life of, trying stuff, learning, keeping an ear to the ground, racing. And the nice thing about making my life with my words, as I have said, as opposed to podiums, is that even when things go terrible, I have something to write about. Like that is always a good consolation prize.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, like a mindset shift.
Oh, even when I'm in it, like like when I'm not doing well or I was not doing well, I'd be like, well, at least I have a good column to come out of this. Yeah.
It's always it's a great way of looking at it. It's a story. You are going through an experience, an adventure, and you have something to tell about it. And if you are a wordsmith, like you are able to communicate that very well.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to the milestone, because I think there is more to be said in that respect, perhaps in the fact that that's kind of the you have been athletic throughout your life. But was that the Ironman event? Was there a moment in that you realized, oh, I have something that I have an untapped potential here? I something here that I need to work more. Like,
I mean, I honestly didn't know I had that kind of endurance. Like that I learned that about myself through that. You know, in school, I played field hockey. I was a ball sport person. You know,
yeah,
I ran short distances. I tried throwing things, you know, like javelins and stuff in track. I liked being active, but I never identified as a runner by any stretch of the imagination or a swimmer.
mm-hmm.
You know, but I was always good on a
Right.
bike. I loved riding a bike. And I did my first triathlon. It was, you know, a sprint, so very short. And I thought it was just really fun. It just was super. I just thought it was super fun. And then as I went on, you know, you become aware of this like giant Super Bowl event like Ironman. And I thought, that is insane. I could never do that. I ran a marathon, you know, I worked with people at Runner's World, and you kind of get sucked in. I'm like, oh, it's a bucket list thing. I'll run a marathon. And after I did it, I was like, I'll never, ever do that again unless it's on an Ironman. Like, that was terrible. I did okay, but I hated every minute of it. But then, you know, in the training for, I'll tell you, it all came about because I read an article in Triathlete magazine, very similar to something I would write, called 16 Weeks to Ironman. And I was like, I can do that.
Right.
Like 16 weeks. Of course, I have 16 weeks. And I decided I should hire a coach because I didn't know what I was doing. And I hired a coach, and his wife was a swim coach. And I never really learned outside of being a kid, you know, in swim lessons, how to swim. And she took 45 minutes off my half Ironman time because I like just learned how to swim. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like, this is like light bulbs were going off. I never became a great runner, but I became good enough at it. Mm-hmm. And I just learned, like, wow, I have so much more endurance potential than I ever in a million trillion years would have imagined. And it went, of course, from 16 weeks because my coach looked at my cycling times and he said, you could qualify for Kona. And I was like, I don't want to hear that. I just wanted to do 16 weeks to Ironman. But then it became, you know, 10 months, you know, of like very dedicated training. And I learned just so much from that process. You know, the work you put in, like all the stuff, like trusting the process, putting in the work, building all of it. Like, I just learned some time management. You know, I'm very good at time management, but that takes it to a whole other place.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then totally. And then after that, I had no desire to do that again. But stage racing on a mountain bike, yes, please. Like I loved doing that. And that was a great place for me to express my endurance and how much I loved endurance.
Interesting. I think that speaks volumes about perhaps the character that you have. Like, this is what I'm hearing is the kind of the resilience and the curiosity to always try to learn new things and go and explore. You know, what can be done, or, you know, can I try this event? Because you know, if you don't have that predisposition, then you won't try. You won't
never try. Yeah.
You had the coaches. You wanted to. You had that foresight of having, okay, I need someone that can coach me through this process. A lot of people will perhaps sign up to a big event because they think, I need to challenge myself, but they won't necessarily hire a coach. They just get a plan from the internet, or just do it like ad hoc kind of training to feel that they will be ready for that event.
Always way better with a coach. It's always, yes. I mean, I couldn't have coached myself for that kind of event. But even after that, once I was doing just cycling, even though I'm a cycling coach, I still kept a coach. Yes. It's the coach is not about writing you a plan. You know, that's just not, like you said, you can get a plan from a book, from the internet, you can get a plan anywhere. It's not what really coaching's about.
Yeah, it's about understanding the individual and understanding what their needs is, and tailoring specifically to them. Well, that's my understanding of it.
Yeah.
But you are the coach.
Yeah, you were correct. That's why coaches need coaches.
And I wanted to still explore a bit more, because the kind of the competition side. You mentioned that you really found your that element, or you found you like, this is my place, this is where I need to be with biking, stage racing. What was about that it still gave you the endurance thrill, the kick that you were looking for?
Yeah,
What was
there's
specifically about that?
I mean, it's kind of everything. It's so I like the skill oriented aspect to it too. You know, it's fully engaging. Like I can't ever, when I'm on my mountain bike, I can only think about being on my mountain bike and what I'm doing and being in the moment. And I'm not always great about being in the moment. So it's like, I liked that because it's just like, this is the only place I'm very present. My head is very present with this. I'm not, people would roll their eyes when they hear me say this. I'm not ultra competitive in that I want to, like, that's not my purpose for it. Like my main purpose for that kind of event was not competition. You know, there are people who are always competitive, right? Like they always want to be like doing something competitive, and that I actually liked that part least, but I really liked the how I could look at my bike and look at the mountains and be like, I'm going to take my bike over all of those mountains today. And it was just like super exciting to me to be like, wow, I can take this tool and get on it and just human power myself through all these mountains and the jungle and like wherever we are. And, you know, it smelled like mountain biking is so immersive because you're doing stream crossings and you're muddy and it's fragrant. And I just really, really
nature as well.
Yeah.
I understand. It puts you closer to nature. You are, like you said, you're surrounded by it, and that's kind of maybe that you feel energized by it.
And easier to get for me into flow. You know, I mean, people talk about the flow state, but mountain biking, when you are in that flow state and you're just like sailing over rocks and jumping logs, it's just, there's nothing more satisfying.
Yeah, and it's fun as well.
Super fun. Yeah,
you don't have to worry about being run over by traffic.
There's that, and I mean, and if you crash, it's usually your own fault. It's usually something that you have, it's not like a bunch of people come down. It's usually like something that you have done.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess then I need to bring it to gravel, because you have recently done several gravel events, and you have recently been inducted into the gravel cycling Hall of Fame,
right?
Which is you are now high up there with many other key figures in the gravel community. What does it mean for you, this recognition, and how do you see it reflecting on the work that you have done until now?
It's very, I'm very honored, I'm very humbled, and I'm very stoked. I mean, those things all existing together. I do believe that, that passion and persistence pay off. So, I think it's a reflection of the passion and persistence that I have put into the bike and into my computer. Both of those things kind of equally, and just, putting myself out into the world, and it's been really nice to be received.
Yeah, it's a very worthy recognition of the work that you've done, and also gathering the community around gravel events and the gravel community. As part of your advocacy work, you also want to bring women to gravel events, whether it is doing 10 miles to 200 miles. It's also I guess part of a recognition of how you're making that space, the gravel scene, more inclusive to women going through menopause, women over 40. And you have been involved in a project called 200 Women, 200 Miles. Can you talk through what this means for you and what is the purpose of this initiative.
Yeah, and I'll give credit where credit's due on that one. That was the brainchild of Christy Mohn, who is one of the founders of Unbound. At the time it was DK 200. Yeah. And, when I first went out to Kansas, which is like where that giant 200-mile, now it's just, there are helicopters. It's like the Super Bowl of gravel cycling.
It is. Yeah.
It really, really is. But, when I went out there the first time in 2013, there were very few women on the start line. And Christy just really wanted to do something about it. And so she made it the initiative, and she called me because she knows that I am passionate about this stuff, and I had this, platform at Bicycling and could use that. And we just really dug in and encourage women. I was able to provide some training advice for those women just to get them to give it a shot, because culturally, societally, there's still a lot of invisible barriers that women have. They still are responsible for most of the domestic work, with children and with all of that. And they feel the weight of that. They are less likely to sign up for this big thing that's going to cost money and is going to take time. And, it's a race and they don't race, it's just all of this stuff. So it's really just breaking it down and just being like, you can totally do this. And women are very, we're sort of suited for endurance, and it just is a matter of sort of giving yourself a chance and showing them that they could. It was successful, and now we have this like really big pro field of women in the Grand Prix. Which is awesome. It's amazing to see how far it's come, and that is only going to expand, right? Because these women have 100%. Like, there's the whole, like, it's cliche at this point, but if you can see it, you can be it, right? Well, somebody has to first be it, So there was like women out there just like, okay, we're here. Like, now let's try to get more of us. And then the more that our women are out there, the more women can be seen, and the more young girls can be like, oh, I could do that. And even older, women 40 plus, I'm like, it's never too late. Like, you can get a bike and go out there. You can 100% do it. So yeah, it's been really satisfying.
Sure. I mean, I've had another guest, Kate Old, in the podcast, and she was talking about discovering cycling later in life, in her late 30s, and she said it just rejuvenated her life because it gave her a new sense of purpose. It gave her an objective that was outside of family work or just work in general.
Yeah.
And she said it's great to have something that is my project, belongs to me, and it doesn't have to involve someone else. Doesn't have to involve my kids.
Amen. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. So it's in that, I guess, the same effect of the initiative of 200 Women, 200 Miles. Perhaps there is the similarity here of, not giving because it already exists, but saying, well, it's here, you can do it. We give you the tools, give you the coaching, and just follow the path that have been already treaded, so to speak.
And there are some events. There's an event here, a local Pennsylvania mountain bike gravel race called Grit, where they hold the spots open for women, because women just tend to take a little more time to think of, so like all the spots don't get sucked up and the race isn't closed before they're like, oh, I can do, so they just hold the spots open and they fill, and it's
that's a great initiative, because it's it does make sense, because there's many other things that you don't have. You're not looking at calendar or in a year in advance of what this is what I can do. I
mean, it happens all the time. It's like it's they're like, I need to check on a few things before I sign up for this.
Exactly. Yeah. You touched upon the fact of being a cycling coach. We've also been a fitness instructor. I'm interested to find out, going as well through menopause, have you been coaching women that have been also been going through menopause? And if so, have you through the conversations you have, through the research you have, identified key strategies to enable the woman that you're coaching to thrive through that transition?
Yes. So to be clear, I don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching anymore. Just because I tend to put all of that time and energy into writing, podcasting, content creation. So it's sort of like very broad coaching, if you will. But, to answer the question, not to plug the book, but this book is all about that. Like, it's all about all the research on, the
next level.
Yeah, it's sort of it's the training. A lot of it's the resistance training that we talked about. Mobility, women, when they go through menopause, have a harder time managing cortisol, so you really need to work on those sort of the bringing it down, the parasympathetic response, the recovery. It's a little bit more of a dance. You can't get away with just miles, piling it on. It doesn't, you might be able to get away with that in your 30s, maybe early 40s, but for a lot of women, that starts to become not productive any longer. So there's a lot of emphasis on that. Like, maybe not so much volume, maybe a little more periodization where you're doing higher intensity work that's shorter, and then very easy, long stuff, but not a lot of that. Like, I'm just going to go out and do steady state for 5 hours, that kind of thing, I think often is more successful for this demographic. And you're seeing that in this is a cycling podcast, but I've had on quite a few ultra runners, like Camille Herron, who is just like shattering all the records now. Talks about that quite a bit, just being very intentional with not just drowning in volume, which has always been like the way of the ultra endurance person. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's interesting. Well, let me just rewind a bit to the gravel, because you have been an advocate to more participation and inclusive ways of bringing more women into those races. Is there specific benefits that you see gravel in particular, gravel riding, specific benefits that you see that for women, 40 plus women?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the biggest ones is honestly community. A lot of the women that I hear from, we have about 30,000 women in the podcast group. I have a complimentary Play Not Pause podcast group, 31,000. A lot of the comments I hear are people, they feel alone. They feel that they don't have the community surrounding them that they would like to have. And gravel is just like, there's a lot of community in gravel. That sport sort of prides itself on that. And
exactly, yeah.
It's very cool. You can see it. I just came when I went to Unbound this year, and just all these groups of women traveling together and riding together. And it's most of them aren't there to get on any podiums or do any of that kind of stuff. They're there just to like really have the experience and soak it in and ride together and have a great time and do their best and see what they can, see what's inside of them. And I think gravel, mountain biking it's not as big, there is a community there, but there's just more barriers to it, and it's more of an individual pursuit often. Whereas, gravel does have that community aspect that I think that women really appreciate and really thrive with.
There was I've had people on the podcast talk about gravel and the community aspect of it, and something that has been reflecting on, and like also through research, is that gravel being a newer discipline than when you compare it to mountain biking, when you compare it to
cycling,
road riding. That has absorbed more of the kind of gender parity and the society, I think, and this is my view, society absorbed more and listened more to what society is doing and what needs to be done in terms of, like you mentioned, like having more spaces for women and reserve those spaces.
Yeah.
And space organizers are more attuned to the needs are to bring more women into the sport and be more inclusive. And then also through conversations that I have with other guests on the podcast is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is women want to be with other women together and don't mind having to traveling a bit longer, or because they want to be part of that community. They want to be part of other women that feel the same struggles that they feel, that can share the same experience. And so they don't, it's for the bond, it needs to be there. So it's that's what kind of, from what I understand, it's what brings them to those events. So because they want to be together and share that experience together.
100%. Yeah. And they'll get a giant house and share it together, and they'll travel together, and it's cool to see. And I'll also note that there are a lot of women race directors and promoters and event organizers in gravel who are women. The sport has a high percentage, like even of the big races, like the Steamboat Gravels, like the Unbounds, that are run by women, and that's pretty cool.
I guess all you need to know about why, why it's it's being a more inclusive space and safe as well. I wanted to bring you to a more higher level now in terms of you said you didn't want to. Well, to the moon. Okay. You're going high. In terms of you mentioned that your career, you didn't quite sit comfortably when I said your career in terms of the sports career. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm interested because you have been through you mentioned through your persistence and hard work and through the resilience, you have been in this upwards trajectory, and you have organically evolved through kind of many sports. And I wanted to try and understand, you have future goals or aspirations that, when you think of your future self, when you're thinking in the future that you have.
I've taken to bike packing, actually, that I've really started to enjoy. Did the San Juan Hut to Huts. Yeah, there's another part of your brain that gets activated with all that. And I always have enjoyed kind of point to point or going somewhere. I think that's one of the things I liked about stage racing too. I liked we're going somewhere. So that has become very intriguing to me. I mean, I don't think you'll ever see me doing the Continental Divide or, any of that kind of crazy, that kind of stuff. But, some smaller level things like that sounds very appealing to me, and I'd like to explore more of that. I certainly fantasize about days when I will have more time that I'm not writing so much, to, get back into swimming. I do like open water swimming quite a bit, and exploring that a bit more. So I've never liked to do the same thing over and over and over again. There are some racers who have done Leadville 25 times or whatever it is, and I'm not one of those people. I like to always do different things. So I always have my eyes out and my ears to the ground on what captures my imagination and what would be challenging, fun, I could, learn and grow from and see cool things. So, yeah, bike packing is probably the biggest one I can think of right now.
Right. Is there any particular some adventure in the near future that you're thinking of?
Yeah, not big. I mean, there's nothing big because I'm mired in my work right now. My computer's keeping me chained to it. There's everybody's creating these very fun sort of shorter multi-day bikepacking kind of things. Yeah. There's I live in Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, so there's a route called the Pants route, which is Pennsylvania north to south. Kind of funny name. But like, I definitely like that's on my very near radar. Like, I would like to do that.
Okay.
It looks really beautiful. It looks cool. It's a great way to explore like your backyard, places you
Of
haven't
course,
seen.
yeah.
So that kind of thing. You know, there's little routes all over. There's like the Hurricane in Florida that the Samurai puts on. I've done some of his, like one of his events last year, and I really enjoyed it. So just like maybe 3-day little adventures here and there. I could see putting some of those together.
Yeah, just that's a taster then to get you into bigger things.
I'm not never going to do the Continental Divide. I can promise you that.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So one of the key questions that I need to ask everyone that comes on the podcast is, what does success look like to you?
Ooh, success looks like to me like a life flow state, like when you're in a place where you are challenged but not overwhelmed and satisfied and are making a difference in the world.
Yeah, that's a very, very purposeful way of living. How do you achieve that flow state? How do you achieve that?
By taking on projects that I think are meaningful and purposeful work. You know, much like I feel that way about the podcast I do. I feel that way about like what I'm doing right now. You know, when I start to feel stale or that I'm not contributing anything new or I'm not like learning, it's time to look on, you know, to think about something else to do. So that is, you know, that's been sort of my North Star throughout my whole professional writing career, is just like continuing to challenge myself and to find the spaces that need a voice, you know, and to lend my voice to those.
Yeah, I mean, I think through our conversation, I was picking out these moments where you were sharing about. That is a kind of it feels like there is a restless curiosity to the way you are.
Yes, you know, that's a good way to lead your life.
Yeah, it's that's a particular trait that allows you to just develop quite fast, I think, because you are constantly curious, constantly wanting to know what's around the corner or taking a new challenge. And I think that's the only benefits to that taking that on, that attitude to life, I think. So it's very important.
It's worked so far, and it
yeah.
I mean, I think being, you know, happy is a weird word because, you know, it's not like I'm bouncing off the walls, but I am. I think that's the key to a happy life is, you know, that kind of. I think we're here to lift each other up, you know, and to leave a positive mark and to explore this existence that we have until wherever we're going. Yeah. So
So to bring this to this conversation, to round this conversation up. So I started the tradition in the podcast where every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. And the question that was left for you is the following: how are you making cycling safe for everyone to enjoy?
Boy, that's a hard one, huh? How am I making cycling safe for everyone to enjoy? Well, boy, there's a lot of work to be done there, Pedro. I mean, it's just like I wish I could do more. I am making it safe in a sort of like safe, you're welcome here way for women. But I also wish we could make it literally safer for everyone to enjoy in our infrastructure and, you know, that kind of thing. There is definitely work to be done.
Yeah, but you are also the credit where credit's due. You work that you have been doing, and the advocacy work that you have been doing, it is already creating a safe space. It's already creating a space where women that are plus 40 or going through the menopause feel safe, and are able to
that's
enjoy
true.
cycling.
Yeah.
It's a broad question, but
Yeah.
we need to give credit where credit is due.
Thank you.
Now is your turn to, I guess, put someone else on the spot. What question would you like to leave to my next guest?
Who do you wish you could get on a bike and why?
Brilliant question. It's a question that I've been thinking about, and it's the first time someone asks that question. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next person that comes on the podcast to answer that question. It's a brilliant question. Selene, it has been a pleasure talking to you, learning more about what purpose is for you, about what it means for you to advocate for women that are going through menopause, bring more women into the sport, and just enjoy it. So thank you for your time, and
thank you.
Thank you for having this conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Ride to Success. A special thanks to Selene Yeager for sharing her incredible journey and insights. Her advocacy and achievements and dedication to creating a culture where women can thrive in cycling has inspired me, and I hope has inspired you as well. If you have enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. I'll be forever grateful. Also, make sure you stay tuned to next week's episode where Selene's question will be answered by my next guest. Until then, thanks for listening and see you next week.